Who turned out the lights?
Hey, where are our dolls?
And where'd the dollhouse go?
That kid is gone too! Oh, hey, where'd that other kid go?
Hello everyone, it is me, Sasha Kawaii Cat, and in today's video, I will be drawing LGBTQ+ cartoon characters. I tried to choose shows that most people might not be familiar with and characters most people might not know are LGBTQ+, because that aspect of their character wasn't really present in the show. The first characters I'll be drawing are Tabitha and Courtney from the Cartoon Network animated series Craig of the Creek. In Craig of the Creek, Tabitha and Courtney are two teenagers who our main character Craig and his friends encounter one day in the creek, which is where the trio usually hangs out. Due to some miscommunication and them being literal kids, they assume Tabitha and Courtney are witches, and due to these teens being pretty mischievous, they go along with it and end up mostly playing tricks on Craig and his friends whenever they show up. But as far as I can tell, they're really just goth teens. Even though these characters really only show up for 1 or 2 episodes, I feel like the show makes it very clear that they are in fact a couple. But just in case it wasn't obvious enough, there is an episode named The Dollhouse where the two are shown openly kissing, so there really is no mistaking them for anything other than girlfriends. The characters themselves I think come across as pretty likable, and their dialogue with each other reveals key aspects of their personalities and their relationships, especially when we first meet them, but it can be hard watching them basically lie to these kids, especially if you love Craig and his friends as much as I do. But I will say despite that, I am older, so I do understand they aren't actually bad. I kinda hope that Craig and his friends secretly know they're not actually witches though, but just like hanging out with them. Also, I refer to these characters as goth, because that's how I think they present, but I don't actually know anything about goths, so I could be wrong. For the drawing, I tried to choose a pose that had them looking pretty close, but I kinda feel like I should have gone with something more intimate. I ended up following the references a bit in terms of their expression. Also, I ended up cutting most of it, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do with the background. I played around with a few ideas, but I think the background I went with looks the best. I should also mention that I am basically assuming these characters are lesbians because I do believe that was their creators' intentions with the characters. There are other queer characters in the show, particularly JP, one of Craig's friends, has an older sister who I believe is a lesbian, and there's also an online gay couple with a cooking show. Aside from the diversity, it's also just a really fun and entertaining show. If you haven't watched it before and you like sort of slice of life adventure type shows, you'd probably really enjoy it.
Like Mira or get in between you guys, and it'll never happen again. I promise.
Between us?
Kai, Adam and I are not dating.
Yeah, you're way off base, man. She is not my type.
Oh.
Dude, I'm gay.
Oh.
Next up, we have Adam from the Netflix animated TV series, The Hollow. The character I'm drawing, Adam, is one of the main characters in The Hollow, along with his friends Mia and Kai. To be honest, watching the show, you kind of think they're going to do this whole thing with him and Mia, and you expect some stupid love triangle, but they didn't do that, and thank God they didn't, because I really hate that stuff. I actually started watching Star vs. the Forces of Evil because I heard that Star had a love interest that wasn't the main guy she was always hanging out with, and I was so glad they didn't go down that path because it is a road well tread, but then they did. But anyway, as for Adam, in the second season he comes out as gay to clear up some misconceptions that Kai had about the relationship between him and Mia, and I think the whole thing was great. I feel like there are people who really praise shows for implying characters are queer or not making sexuality a focus, but I personally think that's always been the case anyway. Shows doing that aren't really doing anything new, they're just following the same old formula that creators have always had to use in order not to upset people who don't like seeing visible queer people in children's animation. I will say cartoons actually having gay characters just casually existing, like in the backgrounds of their shows, are definitely doing something new, but I hate when people pretend that it's the best type of representation because it really isn't. Queer people shouldn't just exist as background decorations or subtext. I like shows that can blatantly have their characters say, "I'm gay," while also not feeling obligated to make the character's sexuality the main focus of the show. I think that they're doing much more as it relates to queer representation. I will say, for some people, it was disappointing to see that after the episode where Adam says he's gay, anything pertaining to his sexuality isn't really mentioned again, and I'd say that's not exactly a bad thing, and that the way they represented Adam as a gay character was overall good. But I will admit that I did notice some implications between Adam and another character named Reeves. It did kind of seem like they might have been meant to be a couple, or at least there might have been something romantic between the two, but it never really went anywhere for some reason. Also, the show was sadly cancelled after only 2 seasons, which is very disappointing, so we'll never really know. Anyway, I think Adam is a really cool character, and if you haven't seen The Hollow, I do recommend watching it.
We did it! We really did it!
We make a pretty good team after all, eh, Boxy?
Yeah.
Next, we have our best dad, Silard Boxman, and Professor Venomous from the Cartoon Network animated show OKKO. So I decided to draw Lord Boxman and Professor Venomous, who I believe are pansexual and bisexual. I know for a fact that Professor Venomous was confirmed to be bisexual, but I'm not sure if Lord Boxman's sexuality was ever actually confirmed. I do know that within the show, he is shown to be attracted to both men and women, so I know for a fact that he is queer. So the characters are villains in the show. If you've never seen OKKO and you watch it for the first time, I guarantee you will immediately fall in love with all the villains, and they're extremely fun and likable. Boxman and Venomous basically end up being partners in the series. They team up and end up sort of being parents to Boxman's robot children and Venomous's adopted daughter / henchwoman. Throughout the show, they are heavily implied to be attracted to each other and are very much coded as a married couple raising their villainous kids. I remember listening to an interview with Ian Jones-Quartey, the creator of OKKO, where he sort of talks about the differences between working on Steven Universe, a show targeted at a much older audience, and OKKO, where the target audience is much younger, and what that meant in terms of what they were actually allowed to portray as far as queer representation. Which is why I think a lot of Boxman and Venomous's relationship is coded and implied rather than explicit. This is something I actually think is a good thing, because I feel like they still did a good job of making it very blatant what the characters' relationship was, even though it had to be a lot of subtext. Like at the end of the series, it's even heavily implied that they got married. And that's not to say that OKKO as a show was terrible at queer representation, or that all the queer relationships were merely implied. No, I've talked about Enid before. She's a character in the show who is openly bisexual and ends up having a girlfriend in the series, with several episodes dedicated to their relationship. That said, it is important to acknowledge that homophobia is different when it comes to male queer characters versus female queer characters. I genuinely believe that it's easier for cartoons to depict queer women than queer men. Like, there is a reason why Enid's relationship was more blatant than Boxman and Venomous's. That said, there is actually another gay couple, Joff and Nick, who I believe was also blatantly a couple. You might wonder why I decided to draw Boxman and Venomous over, say, Joff and Nick. Well, specifically because I think by the end of the show, it was pretty obvious that those two were gay, but I think a lot of people might have missed Boxman and Venomous also being queer characters. Like, not everyone is following the creators on Twitter, so they might not know. Regardless, I love the characters and I had fun drawing them.
That's nonsense. You're amazing. You have the biggest heart, and you could do whatever you put your mind to.
Next we have Perfuma from Shira and the Princesses of Power. So, apparently the person who designed Perfuma did so with the intention that the character will be read as trans. However, they never mentioned this to the writers or the creators of Shira, so nothing was ever really present in the show. Regardless, I believe that Perfuma is trans and that she was meant to be seen as a trans woman, and I do believe this is something that Noelle Stevenson, the creator of Shira, agrees with, so in my mind this is canon. I'm not going to pretend like this is the best representation for trans people, and I do wish there were more substantial examples of trans characters in animation. We do have a few non-binary characters, but I sort of realized that as far as, I guess the term would be a binary trans person, you know, someone like Rachel Bighead from Rocko's Modern Life, I feel like I haven't really seen a lot of characters like that. I have to confess that for numerous reasons, I've only seen a few seasons of Shira. I do plan to finish it, so I've mostly remained spoiler free. I've tried not to really watch anything related to the show or read too much about the show. However, I do believe there is in fact a trans man in the show as well. I think that's a thing, but I'm not quite sure. You can comment below and let me know. Shira is such a good show as it relates to representation that I do believe that if it was mentioned that Perfuma was meant to be read as trans, they might have written something in the show that would confirm that. Like, no one wants J.K. Rowling type representation where Dumbledore is totally gay because she said so online, but she sure as hell isn't going to write anything about it in the actual canon of the Harry Potter universe. But I do think the creators of Shira have, you know, better intentions than someone like J.K. Rowling, so I do hope that we get better representation for trans people in cartoons in general. As far as it pertains to Perfuma, again, I actually never finished watching Shira, so I don't actually know how her character developed. I do know that she's also a lesbian, I believe, and I've seen some clips of her and Scarpia, but I actually have no idea how that relationship developed. I genuinely hope it went somewhere. For the drawing, I really had fun drawing Perfuma. She's a very pretty character, and I really love her whole color palette. Pink and green is such a good color combination. Overall, I think her design is really cool. I also noticed later on that she has a lot of freckles, but I kind of forgot to add some of them. Also, side note, I tried doing the line art for this drawing in Procreate, but the quality looked very weird when I tried to save the time-lapse video, which is why some of the line art process is missing, because I switched back to doing it in Infinite Painter.
And what can you do, my effeminate fellow?
I can suck your dick.
Ha! No.
Your loss.
Well, this just won't do. I suppose I can cash in a few favors to liven things up.
Let's move on to our last drawing. Now, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but if you follow me online, then you already know that I'm an aromantic asexual, so obviously I had to include an ace character in this speed paint video. So I went online and I looked through the sea of canonical asexual characters, and oh boy, it was really a hard choice. There was just so much to pick from, but I decided to go with Aleister from the online animated series Hazbin Hotel. In Hazbin Hotel, the premise involves the Princess of Hell, Charlie, creating a hotel to help reform demons. Devils? ? So they don't get purged every, I want to say month. I don't know, guys. I don't remember much about Hazbin Hotel. I feel like the pilot was a decade ago. Anyway, Aleister, who is a very powerful demon known as the Radio Demon, shows up to help her for his own amusement because he wants to watch people attempt to get better but ultimately fail. I watched the pilot and I thought it was fine. The designs and the writing needs work, but as far as I know, the show hasn't actually aired yet, so who knows how the final product will turn out. As for Aleister, the character is definitely a standout. He's very menacing but also so amusing to watch, and overall I think he has an interesting design. Oddly enough, he's also the one who I think needs more work done to his design. There are little things that, like, just the fact that his horns are so small bothers me. I literally forgot to draw them because they're such an unnoticeable part of his design, though I believe they're meant to be more significant to his character, though I'm not sure. As far as his sexuality goes, I think it was something that the creator of Has Been Hotel mentioned at some point online. I accept this to be true, like I accept that he is an asexual character, but I don't know if it's something they'll actually commit to because the show hasn't started yet. If I've learned anything from Riverdale, erasing Jughead's asexuality, some people do not know how to make an ace character interesting, or they're just not willing to write an ace character. So I tend to be very pessimistic and try not to expect much when it comes to ace representation of any kind. I do like Aleister's character though, and I can see myself watching the show whenever it airs. I wish more people would write asexual characters because I think a lot of people can if they really wanted to. Characters like Goku from Dragon Ball and Luffy from One Piece can easily be read as ace, but I don't think the creators of those shows even know what asexuality is. Like, I don't think they know it's a thing or believe it's a thing, but I would really love more ace characters in animation. As far as Aleister is concerned, I love how the guy who voices his character interprets his asexuality. I've seen some fan animation with voiceover that I believe comes from the live stream that the cast and the creators for the show does, where it's a lot of Aleister just being very uncomfortable with anyone being sexually suggestive towards him or making sexual advances towards him, which I can definitely relate to. Also, he doesn't like being touched, which is something I can also relate to. Anyway, I think Aleister is cool, and I'm genuinely curious to see how his character turns out and how he actually develops when the show finally airs. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like my art and you'd like to show your support, you can always donate to my Ko-fi account. The link to that is in the description below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.